welcome back to another episode of Understanding the Next Gen. I'm Jeff Baxter. I'm the Next Gen pastor at Mission Hills Church here in Littleton, Colorado. And I want to talk about genuine adult communities surrounding the next generation today. I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but in the last several decades, there's been a ginormous shift that's taken place. Here are 4 big shifts that have happened in the last several decades that we need to turn the tide on. Number 1, adults used to believe that all kids were their kids. 30 or 40 years ago, everybody in the community, it didn't matter if you grew up in a small town or a big town, everybody in the community thought that every kid was their kid. Now, sometimes that could get them in trouble, but most of the time, this was positive. Like, I remember growing up in my small town and being surrounded by adults, and there's no way at the Friday night football game that I would have done anything to get in trouble, because I know that an adult would have told my mom and dad, and that adult would have scolded me and got me in trouble, but then they would have told my mom and dad, and they would have been all on top of that whole situation as well. There's a shift that's happened. Now it is absolutely foreign for another adult to speak ill will about someone else's child. That didn't always used to be that way. Number 2, adults used to see their primary role as facilitating children becoming adults. Like, their number 1 role was to help the next generation grow up and become a mature adult, and in our case, a mature Jesus-following adult. We need to pass this important information, this wisdom, this value system on to the next generation. But today, that's changed. To say all kids belong to us, society would say, well, of course they do. And we'd have policies and regulations and things that would seem to support that. But I would argue that adolescents have figured out that they're not the center of all this, and that adults have an agenda for them. So, number 3, adults once saw their kids as assets, not liabilities, because of their worth in the community. So if you ask a teacher 40 years ago, what do? They would say, I teach kids. I love kids, I teach kids. If you ask a football coach, what do? Well, I coach kids. But today, it's not their fault. The system has changed. If you ask an average teacher, what do you teach? What do you do? They'd say, I teach English. Or what you ask a coach, what do? I coach football. Even in the church, we're here for youth, of course, but we've hired separate youth pastors and sent youth down the hallway to a separate room away from all the adults. And rather than, hey, I love kids, and our church love kids, and we're surrounding them with adults who care for them, who help them become mature Jesus-following adults, we send them down the hallway so if they break something or put a hole in the wall, it's out of sight, out of mind. I'm not blaming teachers or coaches or pastors. I'm just saying the system has changed. They have now become a liability rather than an asset for the future. We need to change the focus on that. Finally, number 4, adults used to be there for the next generation more than just driving kids there. And so there's this idea that we would be present, we would be available, and kids would know it because their perception is reality. And if they don't perceive that you're available to them, then they're not going to feel like you're there for them and you love them and you care for them. And by the way, most of the time it's late at night when they want to talk and you say, well, I'm tired, and I've been guilty of this too, where it's like, I don't really want to talk right now at 11 or 12 o'clock at night, but they're available. They want me to be available, so I probably need to step in and do that. See, this whole community thing has shifted. There's a systematic abandonment that's gone on that's no fault of anyone. And of course, there are great people, great teachers, great coaches, great administration, and great pastors out there. But this shift has happened. So parenting, coaching, teaching, ministering, and leading the next generation is difficult, particularly in adolescents age 11 to 25-ish. It's more of an art form than a science. So what do we do about this? Well, we need to learn to dance with encouragement and wisdom rather than strict rules of regulation. It's much more loose. It's much more fluid. It's setting up boundaries rather than these tight rules. We need to shift our thinking back to the next generation being our greatest asset. They are not a liability. They are the future, and many of them are making investments today. We need to spend more time with them. We need to get to know them. We need to see what makes their heartbeat beat and what their passions are. And we need to develop partnerships with coaches, teachers, pastors, parents in the surrounding area so we support them as they're heading towards adulthood. Well, until next time, I hope this has been helpful. We'll see you later.